A wise man told me we are never given a dream without being given the power to make it true. You'll have to work for it, though. I'm Ron Schneider. Back in the 60s, I grew up around California theme parks, dreaming that someday I could make my living with that same kind of magic. In 1971, I got my first performing job at Magic Mountain. The 40 years that followed were one wild ride. And these are the stories of others who had that same dream and made it come true. Welcome to Wild Rides. I'm Ron Schneider. I've always believed that you're never given a dream without being given the power to make it come true. It will take hard work, however, also luck and dear friends and mentors. And the lady I have with me today has been that to me for almost 30 years. She's the executive director of Mad Cow Theater in Orlando, Mitzi Maxwell. Mitzi, thank you for coming down.
Well, thanks for having me, Ron.
It's my pleasure.
Always great to see you.
Same here, same here. I want to talk, how'd you start? Where were you from originally?
Believe it or not, I grew up in Orlando, Florida.
Really?
I did.
I thought of you as this exotic import.
Well, I did go away and spent almost 20 years in Manhattan, and then I came back. And when I came back, Orlando was not the same. Mm-hmm. And of course, the reason it wasn't the same is because all of these amazing parks had opened up and expanded, and it was really a different place. And I thought that was great, that it was different.
You were a dancer for a long time.
Yes, I was.
Were you also doing acting, or was that just
not really?
Dancing? Yeah.
Not really. I was a dancer and also a musician. Mm-hmm. And I grew up in Orlando, and I got kind of the bug to be a performer. Mm-hmm. And I remember spending a few anxious months trying to decide if I was going to go to school, go to college to expand my performing career, mm-hmm. or if maybe I was going to be a doctor or a lawyer. And by that point, I headed off to Manhattan at 17, mm-hmm. and went to New York University, and then stayed in the city for a couple of decades and had a wonderful professional career there.
Really?
Yes.
No idea.
You didn't know this? Oh my gosh! Did you? I toured with the Best Little Whorehouse in Texas.
That I knew.
That you knew.
You were dance captain.
I was.
And you were understudy for
Dotsy May.
Dotsy May.
Yes.
I found that out.
Yes.
So, what in the world brought you back to Orlando?
At the time I'd already been in New York for quite a while. Mm-hmm. I loved New York, and I still love New York. But I didn't really want to be, I didn't want to age in New York. I didn't want to deal with it when I got older. So I said, I'd better be thinking about coming back, or, mm-hmm. And I thought about many different places, but decided to come back to Orlando because of all the exciting things that are here, mm-hmm. That were there at that time. Mm-hmm. But, we're maybe the fourth largest entertainment a town, mm-hmm. After New York, LA, and Chicago. Right. We have just tons of artists, and we have to thank for that the amazing investments that Disney, Universal, SeaWorld, and now there's a few more on the horizon, mm-hmm. As people have built out the parks. Mm-hmm. So it's really quite something. And a lot of times, I don't know how long we have today, but it's an embarrassment of riches, Ron, right here in Central Florida, with regards to the level of talent and the amount of talent that we have. And of course, that's how we met, mm-hmm. which was, deep in the as Universal was coming out of the ground, mm-hmm. When we first met and worked together. That's
it. Now did you work at Universal Hollywood?
No, I did not.
You did not?
No. I joined Universal. I was one of maybe in the first 200 employees right here in Central Florida. It was pretty rare. But I worked for people that had come out from LA. And as you know, many of those people had originally worked for the Curry Company at Yosemite National Park.
I knew that about Tom Williams.
Yes, and Don Potts, and a few others that were in management there. So it was an interesting coupling for the Curry Company, but they had a tour out there, right? Yeah. And Universal has been bought and sold and had so many partners. It really started a long time ago, this kind of round robin of different entities pairing up to run the park for a few years, and then there'd be another group of people that would come in.
As happens with Universal.
That's right, and it's one of the constants. And I think that probably every partner has had its strengths and its uniqueness, and I do think it's one of the things that gives Universal its flavor.
Yeah,
are all those different kinds of people throughout all the years.
And the excitement of never knowing who's going to be in charge
there
next
you go.
week. Yes. Yeah, because I had always believed that you and Sarah Whitten had been tour guides.
No. I've never been a tour guide.
Oh, you would have loved it.
I did go to LA a bunch of times, but I was not part of that group. But when I did, meet up with Sarah, she and Bobby Brandenburg, we began the entertainment department at Universal in the late '80s. So that's what happened. And there were things about the Hollywood Park that were immediately just adopted and incorporated and plowed into the Orlando Park, but there were many things that were brand new that hadn't been done before. Universal Orlando has now become its own entity, and they're not exactly the same. They're run differently.
See, I was a tour guide in '76.
Out there?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
When I was in college, in the winter of '75, they had a job fair, and there was a booth there for Universal. And I went over and I said, I grew up on this tour. I've always wanted to be the guy that sat in the front of the tram and talked for 2.5 hours. And I told them what my background was, and they said, okay, you don't need to come to a follow-up interview. You got the job. Show up for training. And I went through the week training, and it was glorious. It's the most wonderful job. Like I say, you talk for 2.5 hours, and you do the tour 2 or 3 times a day, and I had a ball. And and I certainly could have pictured you doing it as well. For a ham like me, it was just wonderful. This tour now is 45 minutes long, and they've added video, and it's just not the same. We had so much fun, and the people that you met in that break room were amazing. Those tour guys were just incredible. So you talk to me about your collaboration with Sarah and Bob, and the discoveries you had to make. I mean, you're starting from scratch with that show.
Oh my gosh. Well, at the time when we got together, I think Sarah was there first. Bob came second because the tour. He had been a tour guide, and there was a lot of emphasis on getting that up and running because it had been part of the portfolio in Hollywood, so it made sense, And then
it only stopped making sense once they opened it.
That's right. And interestingly enough, Bob took all of his experience from both parks and ultimately went to work for Nickelodeon. And I think this is one of the things that's so amazing about working for the parks is that they do all share some aspects. So if you work for one park, it's not out of the question that you might work for another one for a different company. And Bob Brandenburg's a great example of that because he went on to work a lot for a Nickelodeon, and then also became a writer and director for other shows on cruise ships and other parks around the country. I don't know if you know that, but
did not notice.
So as we got together, things are just coming out of the ground. They're doing the infrastructure. They're putting in all of the roads and all of the utilities, and we, of course, were trying to get an idea of what was the live piece going to be, and the emphasis, of course, at Universal early on were the rides. And the live entertainment was kind of going to just be a little extra over here. So we spent a good 2 or 3 years watching, listening, absorbing what the producers of what now is Universal Creative were coming up with regards to the rides. And these were all folks, for the most part, that had come from LA. I remember one person that I learned a lot from was Jane Jackson. And she was a top producer. She had worked for Imagineering, she had worked for Universal. And I remember meeting her, and she was one of the few women that were producing at that time, at that level. Now, obviously, there have been a lot of changes that have happened in terms of the parks and the ability for women to have a voice and have a place. But back in the late 80s, not so much. But anyway, the three of us really bonded, and as we saw what we were about to inherit, which were some live shows that hadn't really been created, we started to sweat a little bit. And then when the park opened and the rides did not work, then suddenly all of the live entertainment became incredibly important. So actors were hired, and then we had to very quickly increase the number of actors we had because we were doing more shows because people could not ride the rides. And that did sort of fix itself over the next couple of years, but the entertainment department really, really, I think, saved the day. Now, I am biased because I love entertainment, I love live entertainment, but that is what kept the guests happy there for quite a couple of years before they got the rides going.
Don't I know it? Talk a bit about finding that talent and the whole process of that casting those shows, because there were some wonderful shows. The post-production show was just charming, and you had some great people in that show who would become theme park veterans too. Oh
my gosh, that's one of my fondest memories actually, is casting everything, because we were casting hundreds of people. And I remember that one of the things that happened was that we had a big audition, and it was at the Dr. Phillips High School. Because were you there?
I was there.
Were you there?
I showed up. I was between jobs. I just finished doing a consulting job writing for Disney MGM.
Right.
And I needed work. And so I went to the cattle call, and there were people dressed as Charlie Chaplin, and the school was crammed. And I got called into the auditorium, and they marched us up on stage, and there were 10 of us in a row, and we were invited to step forward and give our names. And of course, everybody had worked up like a minute audition, everything like that. And then we were typed out, okay, you stay, and everyone else stepped through that door, and you were in the parking lot.
Yes.
And so I wound up going back to Disney Casting and saying, I need some work. And so Ronnie Rodriguez, God bless him, said, okay, we could really use you, and we'll start you next Monday. And then I went, in the meantime, I'm talking to Danny Burzlaff, and he says, we need you here.
Wow.
And I wound up there. But go on with what you think.
So those auditions, it was over a number of days. We thought we'd get a few hundred people. Over 1,000 people showed up. And this would have been in, I'm thinking 1980, 88, 89, maybe 90. I don't really actually remember, but it was at some point in that time. I think it was
89.
89. And there were all kinds of people. And everyone that came in that door, Ron, wanted to be there. And you were talking a little bit earlier about your dreams. There were a lot of dreams that came through the doors that day that were just so excited about getting a chance. Orlando had never seen anything quite like it. Disney took, I think, originally a little bit different approach. They brought people from out of town. But by the time that a good 20 years later that Universal opened, there were many more artists here in Central Florida. And of course, it's just gone through the roof since then. Universal, we did go out to some other towns looking for talent, and we did bring some people in because we were looking for all kinds of people. And it's something that today I still tell people, other artists, when people talk to me about auditioning. You know, an audition is planting a seed. You never know when it's going to sprout. There were people that came through the doors that day, and we didn't hire them then, but 3 or 4 years later, we did. And I think it's something that it's sort of a little bit of a secret that it's not. It just continues on. You never know when that audition is going to sprout, so go to as many as you can. So there were lots of people that auditioned. There were many people that we hired, and there were just hundreds of artists suddenly that were performing in the park.
So the first 3 years at Universal, a lot of talented people were brought in. A lot of them came and went. And slowly, a lot of them, the management changed. And the wonderful people that we started out working with, a lot of them went away, and you and I were left.
Yep.
Which was a strange situation, because
Yes.
we'd had virtually no contact up to that point. And then suddenly, I'm coming talking to you after Halloween, and with a couple other people. We had Amy Henry was with us, and Bryce Ward, God bless him.
Oh, yes.
And suddenly we're the entertainment division.
Yes.
And talk about that transition.
Well, you know, I'll tell you something. As I think back to those days, I'll tell you what that taught me. The beauty and value of relationships. Because we didn't really know each other too well, and there had been a big sea change in who was working there, and we had to get along. We had to figure out a way to keep doing the work. And I remember too, about this time, we began to get a sense of what, I'm not sure if you coined this phrase or someone else did, the repetition factor that was happening with actors. The idea that at some point you were going to burn out of your job because you could only do the Ghostbusters show so many times. So actually, since the late 80s, there is now a pretty good pipeline between people that work in the parks as performers and the local professional theater companies. Because supervisors or stage managers, depending on which park you're talking about, know that a really great way to keep an actor engaged and healthy is to give them a chance to do something else every once in a while. So for both parks, the theater company that I'm involved with now, Mad Cow, as well as others like Orlando Shakes and Winter Park Playhouse and the Rep, the parks adore us because we help them retain artists. And for us, we were sort of on the creative and operational side. The same thing is true because you can really burn out at a park if you don't take really good care of yourself. But I remember that time, and trying to make sure that we were able to do what we needed to do, but yet we were building the plane as we were flying it practically.
Very true. There was such a raw feeling to it. We were really flying by the seat of our pants. Jay Stein would come up with a crazy idea, and he would do these treatments. He'd send me treatments that would be like a page and a half, and then it would say in parentheses, "Need creative." And I would have to come up with an ending for the thing, and it was up to us in the trailer to mount these things. And
I don't know if you remember, but after the park had been open and the ride started to work again, there was a big effort to try and increase attendance. And so I don't know if you remember this story the same way I do. It's always interesting after a number of years to compare notes. But Jay Stein said to a group of people, I think you were in the group. I know I was in the group. Sarah was in the group. Bob was in the group, a few others. Universal needs to own a holiday, just like Disney owns Christmas. So what is it going to be? So off we went. And it was definitely a group effort. But, there's always some people maybe that work on something a little bit more than others. But the story behind it is that that's how Halloween was born, was that it was decided that Universal would own Halloween because Universal could be a little, what would I say, a little edgier.
Oh, yeah.
And because, Beetlejuice and everything, was a much better fit for Universal. So I think that, and those were difficult days because we were under the gun to come up with something.
Now, I was not in that meeting.
Okay, you weren't.
The first I heard of Halloween was Neil Miller. God bless him. Calling me in saying, we need a Chainsaw Massacre in New York, and we want to do a little show behind the Bates Motel. And he just gave me these things and said, run with it. And they got bigger and bigger and bigger. And that was the start of my really writing for a career, because before that I was just doing the celebrity lookalikes. And that's what got me established as a writer with the company. But that was really by the seat of your pants show, the whole thing, and a tremendous success. And the line at the time was that Jay Stein had been weaned on a chainsaw, and so we could do these things. We could go there and affect people and scare people, and it made all the difference in the world. And we owned and have continued to own Halloween.
Yes.
And then we tried to do Christmas. Were you there? You were there.
I was around for some of that Christmas. Yeah.
That was.
Well, I know that there are people, that are listening and watching that are curious about, how do you get into this business and how does that all work? And one of the things, I've hired a lot of people to work in the parks at all levels. And I've probably auditioned, I'm going to say about 10,000 people over my career. I think one thing that's really important is to have a sense of curiosity. I think that being able to be curious is something that it'll never fail you. It will always be something that can take you far and will bring new ideas.
Yeah, I've always found that doing the writing I've done for theme parks, you're always given a theme, whether it's the Blues Brothers or the Cavalry or Medicine Pitchmen, and they become hobbies for me, and they stay with me at all times. But that curiosity enables me to do the research, and that's often the most fun part of the whole project is adapting to a new hobby. Yes, you were just a wonderful friend and mentor to me all those years, and I will forever be grateful about that. Now, suddenly, though, you disappeared. You went off property. You were in an adjacent building. I would come by and visit. We'd talk about classic movies.
Oh, yeah.
But what were you doing?
I was kind of an advanced team for the new park.
That's what I thought.
And so it was a very interesting time, and my curiosity is something that was very helpful to me at that time. And I was doing a lot of research. I was doing a bit of writing myself. I was traveling around the country looking at other entertainment products. So it was really fascinating. And one of the things that I did, this is not really very entertainment related, except that the whole experience is something that is very important to any theme park operator from the time that you drive on property. I measured parking spaces all over the country at the major parks because it was a driver, the size of the parking space was a driver to the amount of land that would be needed and how many people you could get on any given site. And it was very interesting, and parking spaces varied all over the country, and so did parking garages. So I found myself becoming a bit of an expert on parking, and who knew, you know? And throughout my career, I've always had projects that maybe took me a little bit out of my comfort zone, but I've always found that by just jumping in, doing the best job you can, is the way to go.
That's one of the exciting things about theme parks. We create magic in real world. So we have to deal with all the realities of operations, of plumbing, of restrooms, of wastebaskets, of parking spaces, and deal with it creatively because we're trying to tell a story, trying to create magic. And so, yeah, I know that feeling. You find yourself learning about all kinds of things that you had no idea you were going to be involved with. What's it like for you now to visit Islands of Adventure after having been so integral to creating it?
Well, you know, I was not around when it was built. So, you know, it is like a whole new world. The industry itself has just progressed so much that it just isn't the same process anymore. Yeah. The computer has changed everything. And how Universal is integrated, I would say, live action into the park is, I think, unique and something new and different. And it's going to be interesting to see, of course, after the pandemics that we're going through, what will happen with some of the new plans.
Have you seen the Bourne Show?
I have not.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. It's just amazing. So Mad Cow Theater is in the 21st season.
23rd.
23rd?
We just finished the 23rd.
Oh my.
Yeah.
And you've been on the front line negotiating with talent, staff,
Yes.
volunteers, acting as liaison between performers and management, between me and everyone else.
Raising money.
raising money, which is
do.
a major thing for
Yes.
you.
Yeah.
And creating seasons that are ambitious and unexpected. I know you guys started with, you didn't want to repeat any authors, any
The
playwrights.
first 10 years, we didn't repeat a playwright.
Yeah.
And it was a wonderful choice. And it really set the theater up for some great success because it meant that there was just, you know, a huge array of stories being told by different kinds of playwrights, different kinds of stories, different kinds of actors. And now that we're starting our 24th season, we've done about 180 productions, and we still rarely repeat a playwright. There are some playwrights that we do repeat, but I don't really think we've strayed too far away from that. We are always looking for a new voice, or seeking to find a way to tell perhaps an older story in a new way. And it, like I said, it's one of the best things that we ever decided to do because it's meant that when you come to Mad Cow, you don't quite know what you're going to get.
It's so true.
And it's also because we respect the audience. We trust that people can have an experience that will be theirs. And that also led to us doing talkbacks twice a week on Thursdays and Sundays, which we still do, where people, the audience that wants to stay, they hang out and we bring the actors and the artists back, and there's a talkback that happens between the audience and the actors, and it's wonderful.
It's fun for the actors, I can tell you that. That's just a blast. And so now you've got the Science Plays.
Science Play Festival. We also have a Spanish Theater Festival that we are doing. And we are in the middle of a women's playwriting festival called Women's Voices. We have just started that this year. Everything's virtual. And in late October, we'll be opening a festival called the 19th Amendment Project that will all be about the 19th Amendment right before the election.
Nice.
And as far as what's coming up for the theater next year, we'll have to see. We're looking at everything that's happening in the world and trying to pull out our crystal ball to figure out when we can get back to doing things in a live manner.
It's so exciting. It's just so exciting. All the dealings that I've had with Mad Cow have been just charming and educational and so much fun. And it's a great place to work.
Well, and we've known each other a long time, and as I said earlier, relationships are the name of the game.
That's what it is. That's exactly what it is. Thank you, Mitzi,
You're very
so
welcome.
much. This has been a delight, and not only for this, but for all you've given me. I'm so appreciative.
Same here.
Thank you, darling. That's Wild Rides. I'm Ron Schneider. Follow your bliss, and you're in for one wild ride.